Thank you, Amy, for the introduction. I'm delighted to be here. I'm always excited to be on the main stage. And it's a time for me to be able to connect with the audience and try and give a little bit of experience and wisdom for spending so many years in this field. This talk is really meant to reground you in some ways in the fundamentals, but also to learn how to sort of take a lens and cut through a lot of the information that sort of is out there that might be hard to integrate. I've been in the audience too. I know what it's like when you're listening to all of these lectures and you hear things that are exciting, but there's no way to integrate them into a framework. It's sort of, what do I do on Monday? And the real problem with this style of practice is that, especially in the early phases, I guarantee you'll have some clinical wins. You'll learn some things about diet, some hormone balancing, maybe a little bit of detox. You'll talk about stress, and you'll see a lot of patients get better. They will also think you are the smartest practitioner they have ever met. And over time, though, those patients will bring in friends and family and loved ones who are a lot sicker. It's the sister with breast cancer and rheumatoid arthritis, and she may have a diagnosis of lupus, and her dog just died, and she wants you to fix her because you sprinkle pixie dust. You have some magical knowledge that other practitioners don't have. And the patients become more and more and more complicated. I joke now in my practice, where we don't advertise at all, we don't have a marketing agenda whatsoever, but it's all word of mouth. We have a number of month wait list. My practice is now the island of misfit toys. I get all of the patients that have been to Hopkins and Mayo and the local specialists and their PCP and the acupuncturist and the chiropractor and they've taken peyote and they've done the sweat lodge and whatever they can to try and get better. And you're the last resort. You'll see your practices migrate from relatively straightforward to more and more complex patients, and they come from a greater and greater distance. Who's had this happen to them already? You know what I'm talking about, right? If it hasn't happened, if you persist in this field, it will happen. And so as you're learning and growing in your practice, you'll go to conferences, you'll talk to experts, and it's easy to get lost in the amount of information that's thrown at you. So what I'm going to try and do today is talk about how do I help reframe some fundamental issues in patients that if you don't get these right, it's hard to get all of the other stuff better in most patients. So this is a quote that I really like. It's from Fouad Lachine. He's a neuroscientist. He was nominated for the Nobel Prize in 2001. And he's done some really seminal work looking at brain function. So a human being is much more than the sum of blood, bone, and viscera. In the same way, each fragment of truth in itself is a lie. Therefore, the accumulation of unintegrated scientific facts does not protect us against ignorance. In the measure that we interrelate a greater number of fragments, the closer we can come to truth, although truth as an absolute is unattainable. And it's this notion that sometimes what you're looking at, you think you understand, but you don't really understand. The body is this complex ecosystem with changes and compensatory responses and abnormal responses that accumulate over time. And there's some key features in the talk today that I'm going to point out that might even be a little surprising to you, that we're going to twist your mind a little bit around some common ideas and help you look at them maybe a little differently. The framework that I want to use is one of these triads that Dr. Laval and I have developed over time. It's a way of looking at patients. It's a way of organizing data and information and to make it easy to understand what you're looking at, but also to create a vernacular, a way of talking to your patients so they understand what you're trying to do for them too, and they have a better understanding of themselves. So adrenal, thyroid, pancreas, cortisol, thyroid hormone, and insulin. It's about energy production and circulation. On a global scale, what I tell patients, it's about stress, metabolism, and sugar. These three hormones regulate physiology, and when they're normal, when people are managing their stress and their relationships, they live with meaning and purpose, they're eating right for whatever their nutritional needs are, and they're maintaining their energy levels through efficient metabolism related to their thyroid, typically people feel pretty well. They function well in the world and they have vitality. But if they're overwhelmed by stress, if they've broken their stress response, if they're becoming insulin resistant, if their blood sugar is climbing, if their thyroid numbers are beginning to drop, they tend to feel unwell. They tend to be gaining weight. And there's a number of complaints that often kind of surround this set of imbalances. What's interesting is that from a conventional perspective, I spent many years at the University of Michigan in the Department of Family Medicine.